Greetings everyone, I'm Ambasing and today I'm with Mayes for the episode 22 of Power Pages Quick Tip series. We will explore how to configure Power Automate Cloud Flows in Power Pages. Power Automate Cloud Flows allow users to create automated workflows between different applications and the services. You can use a Power Automate Cloud Flow to create the logic that perform one or more tasks when the event occurred. For example, configure a button so that when a user select it or clicked it, send an email or meeting request, update records, collect data, synchronize files, and do a lot of other tasks. Now, you can securely invoke the Power Automate Cloud Flows from the Power Pages to interact with 1400 plus external data sources and the connectors. Integrate it to your business sites. Prerequisites to integrate with Power Pages. A Power Automate license is required. It is recommended to use a Power Automate process license in the production instances. Follow the following 3 steps to integrate cloud flows. Create a cloud flows, add the flow to your site, invoke a flow from your websites. Remember, when you add a flow to your website, a unique URL will be generated that allow you to invoke the cloud flows from your site. Also, you don't need to include any authentication code because the application sessions manage authentication and authorizations. All API calls must include a cross-site request forgery CSRF tokens. Now, I would request to Mayes to show that how we can configure Power Automate Cloud Flows in Power Pages. Over to you, Mayes.
Thank you, Ambesh. I will share my screen. So first of all, let's start at the flow. The flow has to have a specific trigger, which is called here Power Pages. And in this trigger, similar like when you call, for example, from other flows, so manual triggers, you can add inputs. So the types are text, Boolean, files, numbers that are available. And of course, you could do complex objects or something like this if you pass them in JSON text. I have here a blind text that will be prepended in this case. That's just a description. Then I am performing here an action, which is greeting the user. And this brings me to the parameters we have available. So the Power Pages trigger has site ID, site URL, and user ID, which is the ID of the contact that is logged in. Of course, only if you have a logged in user. And the blind text is for my trigger. And then there is, if you have return values, of course, you can return something. Again, we have the same parameter types for the output. I've called it here text. And then I'm just putting together the blind text and the outputs of my action. So yeah, just concatenating 2 strings here. Notice, because we will lead that later, blind text is in this camel case, and text is also written with a big T. So next up, let's switch over to the Design Studio. We start at Setup. Here in Integrations, you find Cloud Flows. And here we have the flows. The one we just saw is already in my site. And there is only one other flow listed. Of course, in my environment, there are a lot more flows, but only flows with the specific Power Pages trigger are listed. And then this is what Ambesh just mentioned. Here's the unique URL we need. And they always look the same. Just at the end here, this GUID changes. And that GUID is the workflow ID. Not the workflow unique ID, but the workflow ID. This stays constant, luckily, because that makes deployments easier. Because if you deploy now the site and the flow to another environment, the ID will be the same. So I can just hard code it in my code, unless I don't know, I want to switch it somehow. But yeah, and with edit, I can open it, and here is the authorization. So this flow is only available to authenticated users. Makes sense here because of the greeting, right? Yeah. But I could also further limit it to, I don't know, only administrators, only my custom role, if that is relevant. And if that is not sufficient enough, also I can do with the user ID for logged in users, I can do further things in my code, in my, I don't know, I query if he has a certain record associated to it, more complex things. Okay, so now we have it in our site. Let's call it next. So for this, in the home page, you can see here the button, who am I in a flow? And now we need to go to code. I pre-opened this. And you can see here, this is the home page, and here is the button with the text, and it calls on click a function, who am I in who am I flow. And then the other thing we need is this ... with the ID who am I, because we are outputting to this paragraph. So let's hop over into the JavaScript, who am I flow. On success, we are populating the who am I with result.text. And this is why I said, notice the output. The text here is in lowercase. Although we output it in the flow in uppercase, I will show this again right here, this text. So everything is lowercase when you get it out of the flow. And let's take a look at input. So we are building an inputs object. There we have the blind text, this time in camel case, really like it is written in the input. And we put in here, this is hello, as our blind text. Then we have the workflow ID, A07. I will double check that here. So it was something, yeah, A07. And then I have a third function here that is pretty generic, yeah, calling a flow. And so we are appending the workflow ID to the end. Then we build a payload, another object that has a property event data. And in this event data, we are putting our real object, right, our real inputs as a JSON string. And then you have this function, this is provided shell.ajax save post, which has this cross-site request forgery token inside. So you can just use this function to satisfy this requirement by Microsoft. And in there we have the data, which has here this payload object, again, stringified JSON. An important thing, this line is not in the official documentation right now. I've submitted a pull request, they haven't accepted it. You need to set the content type of your input to application JSON. Otherwise, it will fail with, it couldn't read it. I think a 400 error, just put here content type. And then, you pass the response. It will again be a JSON string, and then I call the onSuccess function here, populating the text. Okay, let's hop over into the Power Apps portal. This is my homepage. I click the button, the function is executed, and it will take a second until I get the result. Here, hello, our blind text, and then the response from my API, you are Marius Wodke, which obviously had from the user ID, it got the real name of the user. If we take a look at the network tab, I need to find it. This is here the A07. So it's API Cloudflow V1 trigger, and then our workflow ID, post, and then the payload, event data, and inside the event data, the JSON string. Then the result will come out like this. So an object with all the parameter or output parameters you had, but the names are in lowercase. And yeah, that's it, I guess.
Thanks, Marius, for the wonderful demo. Please note few additional tips from my side. Your PowerPages site version must be 9.5.4.xx or later for these features to work. Or if you're using your starter site package version, then it must be 9.3.2304 or the higher version. Also, please note that only solution-aware flow can be attached to the PowerPages site. If you're not putting in the solution, then yes, you cannot move it, as we already talked about that. Also, stay tuned to this channel by subscribing and pressing the bell icon. Share the videos with your friend or the colleagues who are having the same skill sets like you or want to deep dive into the Power Pages. We would like to come up with the more interesting tips, knowledge sharings, and the lesson learnings around the Power Pages. Also, please always keep your eyes into the description of the video so that you are always up to date with the latest information. Till that, have a nice time and happy learning. Bye.